Hello everybody, my name is TJ and welcome to my new YouTube channel. I created this channel because I like to read books, I like to talk about books, and I own a lot of books. In fact, I own about 1,000 individual books, all nonfiction, and I keep them here in my 5x10 storage locker at a self-storage facility. Many of the books I read, and many of the books I own, very few people have read, and even fewer people talk about. And I thought creating a YouTube channel would be an interesting way to discuss and share these books with other people. So in this video, I just wanted to introduce some of the books I read and some of the books I own to give you an idea of the kind of books that I'll be discussing and sharing in future videos. So the first book I want to share with you is probably my favorite biography. It is by J.E. Flint and it's about Sir George Goldy. Sir George Goldy was a pioneer, colonial pioneer in a way, because he established the first British chartered company after the end of the East Indian Company in India. He established the Royal Niger Company on the Niger River and was instrumental in the establishment of Nigeria as we know it today. I don't much care personally for biographies of colonial figures because I oppose colonialism and everything it stands for. However, I really like this book because the author didn't write the book in a way that glorifies colonialism. He wrote it in a way that almost scientifically examines the role of Sir George Goldy and the making of Nigeria, which I thought was really interesting. So I probably have to say this is probably one of my favorite biographies I've ever read. This next book is by Nasir Dashti, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, and it's called The Baloch and Baluchistan. This book is an absolutely incredible history of the Baloch people and the origins of the Khan of Kalat, which was the first modern Baloch state that was, I believe, taken over by Pakistan in 1948. And this author traces the history of the Baloch people all the way from even further back than, like, as far back as you can possibly take the genealogical record to about approximately when they were the Kurds and the Balochs were all, kind of a tribe or a clan that lived just south of the Caspian Sea in northern Iran. And he traces the Baloch people all the way from that period, that, however many years ago that may have been, all the way through their migration and persecution through the Caspian Sea region of Iran, all the way down south into what is now the province of Baluchistan in Pakistan. And while most of the book is way over my head because I'm not that not that familiar with ancient history, it is an absolutely incredible book that I would highly recommend anybody to read if they're interested in South Asia or anthropology or any of those kind of subjects, especially if they're interested in Pakistan or Afghanistan in particular. This next book I want to share with you is by Adib Khalid, and it's called Making Uzbekistan. And as you can see, I have sticky notes all inside of it because I really thoroughly enjoyed this book. And besides, who doesn't want to read about Uzbekistan? I mean, come on. And what I really liked about this book was that it was the first book I ever read that challenged the kind of the orthodox Western scholarly view that the creation of modern day republics such as Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and other kind of countries and former Soviet republics was due to some kind of sinister Soviet divide and conquer policy, and in some cases even to Stalin's personal lust for power. And this author completely discredits that narrative. He examines the origins of the Jadids or the Jadids, however you pronounce it, and their role in the creation of Uzbekistan, how the creation of Uzbekistan and Soviet national territory delimitation was not a top-down, in some sort of imposed on the people in Turkestan by Moscow, but was in fact very much influenced by the people in Turkestan, such as the Jadids or the Jadids, and that the Soviet nationality policy was not some crude divide and conquer strategy, and it was certainly not due to some you know, lust for power on the part of Stalin, and even less due to some mad, crazed seizure he had over a map, and whatever happened there just was the result of that turned into Soviet republics. So I think it's a phenomenal book, and I would highly recommend it to anybody interested in Soviet nationalities policy. Another book on that same topic, but from a slightly different perspective, is Artuz Muhammadov's How the National Question Was Solved in Soviet Central Asia. Now, this writer obviously is an Uzbek Soviet writer, so it's published by Progress Publishers, so it's going to have the Progress Publishers kind of writing style to it. But what I really liked about this book was that the author offers a class analysis of Kokand autonomy. And what is Kokand autonomy? Kokand autonomy is often cited in most kind of Western scholarly material as a genuine movement of national self-determination, and that Soviet nationalities policy was, was hypocritical and only existed on paper because the Soviet Union declared that all nations had the right to self-determination, and then crushed a genuine movement of national self-determination in Kokand, which was a major city in the Fergana Valley in Russian Turkestan. This author takes a class analysis of Kokand autonomy and shows, beyond any reasonable doubt, that Kokand autonomy was actually a reactionary movement, not a genuine movement for national self-determination. It was a movement led by the deposed landlords and mullahs and former czarist officials that opposed the Bolsheviks and socialism in 1918, I believe, during the Russian Civil War, and was allied with the White Armies of British and Britain. And that the Kokand autonomy was not, by any means, a genuine movement for national self-determination. Interestingly enough, Artuz Muhammadov, for instance, cites that fact that it's even called Kokand autonomy disproves that it was a genuine movement for national self-determination on the part of the people of Turkestan, because the leaders of the Kokand autonomy declared the independence of all of Russian Turkestan, not just Kokand, but even supporters of Kokand autonomy call it Kokand autonomy because they had no support outside of Kokand. So to argue that it was a genuine movement of national self-determination is to ignore history, essentially. So I really appreciate the class analysis of Kokand autonomy by Artuz Muhammadov in this book. A book I'm currently reading and just recently arrived in the mail is The Making of Nagorno-Karabakh, edited by Levon Chorbajan. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Again, kind of like the Adib Khalid's book on Uzbekistan, this is the first book I've ever read specifically dealing with the origins of Nagorno-Karabakh and the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. In particular, what's unique about this book, in my opinion, is that it is from a very Armenian perspective, a very pro-Nagorno-Karabakh perspective. And that is rare to find because most scholarly works, support the kind of imperialist line that, territorial integrity of states is inviolable, while at the same time supporting the secession of Kosovo from Serbia, or ignoring Israel's occupation of the Golan Heights or Turkey's occupation of northern Cyprus and other kind of instances. So I really like reading it from a otherwise radically different perspective, the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, as well as by extension the Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic within Azerbaijan and how it came out to be. Another book that greatly influenced me is Jose de Castro's The Geography of Hunger. This book is very unique because typical orthodox bourgeois Malthusian kind of ideology says that overpopulation leads to scarcity, which leads to poverty and famine and all these other terrible conditions. This author, Jose de Castro, actually argues the opposite of that. And I know that's like, wow, how do you, what? And even I thought that was weird, but he makes a very strong scientific case that actually poverty and scarcity, which is, all artificial, actually leads to overpopulation. So if you want to end overpopulation, you have to end poverty, not you have to end overpopulation to end poverty. And he does it very scientifically, and I'm not able to summarize that all in this video. But you have to read it to fully appreciate it. Another book you have to read to fully appreciate is Bruce M.Z. Cohen's book, Psychiatric Hegemony, A Marxist Analysis of Mental Illness. I really don't need to say any more about that. It's a Marxist analysis of mental illness and mental health and psychiatry and medicine, and, well, also education, more generally, under capitalism. And I don't even have words to describe it. You have to read it to fully appreciate it. I can't do it justice by talking about it in a video. Other books that I'd like to share with you. This book is kind of like Adib Khalid's book by Arsene Saparov. I'm probably not pronouncing that properly. It's From Conflict to Autonomy in the Caucasus. It's about the making of Abkhazia, South Ossetia, and Nagorno-Karabakh. It's not about the current conflict. It's only about how these, kind of de facto states came into existence, the history of them, and how Soviet national territorial delimitation led to the creation as either autonomous republics or autonomous regions or autonomous oblasts or whatever the case may be. Abkhazia and South Ossetia within Georgia, and Nagorno-Karabakh within Azerbaijan. However, just like Adib Khalid, he discredits completely the mad Stalin seizure mentality or perspective on how these republics came about and on Soviet nationalities policy or the divide and conquer, like all that crap. He argues that while Soviet nationality policy may have been clumsy and may not have been, properly, done very well, it was nonetheless designed, however poorly, to end ethnic conflict, so that socialist development could take place, not to create ethnic conflict which already existed in the first place. You can cite the Armenian Tatar massacres in 1905, or the Baku pogrom of Armenians in, I think, 1918, or so on and so forth. So to argue that actually, as he does, that the Soviet Union divided and, sought to divide and conquer these territories doesn't make any sense in light of the fact that they were already divided and there was no unity to divide in the first place. I thought I had a couple other books here I wanted to share with you. Here they are. These two books are by the same author, A History of Pakistan and A History of Afghanistan. They're both by Gengowski, and they're both Marxist histories of these two countries, which is quite fascinating because you don't often come across a Marxist analysis of Afghanistan or Pakistan, in fact even less so with Pakistan. And I really liked reading about kind of the Marxist, like a Marxist perspective on the partition of Pakistan and India in the case of the book on Pakistan, and a Marxist kind of Soviet perspective on the PDPA and the Tsar Revolution in Afghanistan. So I would definitely recommend all these books to be read. In fact, I recommend most of my books to be read. But maybe, just for the sake of it, a couple other books that are important to me. This book, again, all marked up, Cultural Cleansing in Iraq. It's by several authors. And it's about how U.S. occupation forces systematically destroyed and tried to eliminate museums and basically the pre-U.S. occupation history of Iraq, including murdering academics, intellectuals, and professors. And it's a strong case that the United States was deliberately cleansing Iraq after the 2003 occupation. This book kind of complements the book on Sir George Goldie that I earlier mentioned. It's called The Fulani Empire of Sokoto. And essentially this book is about the history of West Africa immediately prior and during the arrival of Sir George Goldie. Because Sir George Goldie had to had to work with, the Fulani Empire or its, offshoots when he created his Royal Niger Company and started to do business in Nigeria, and created treaties kind of like the East Indian Company in India. So that about sums up this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you subscribe and can follow my other videos that are hopefully going to be coming in the near future. As soon as I finish Levon Chorbajan's book, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, I will post a video about that one and discuss more detail on that once I finish it. Otherwise, thank you very much.